Welcome back to the channel, Red Bull fans. Today on the show, we have Aidan Stokes, New York Red Bull 2 starting goalkeeper. Aidan is a tri-national eligible for the U.S., Wales, and England. This year, he's in his second full season as a professional soccer player, and he talks about his improvements he made over the summer after a difficult first season as a pro, not making the playoffs in MLS Next Pro. He also talks about his performance in the U15 MLS Next Championships on their way to a national title with the New York Red Bulls. So, thanks for stopping by and enjoy the episode. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back for episode 3 of my sit-down interviews with New York Red Bulls 2 players. Today, we are joined with Aidan Stokes, the starting goalkeeper. Aidan, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, feeling good. Just got out of training today. It's been pouring down, but we got through it. I'm just glad I'm inside now and dry and everything. So, but been doing well.
All right. I kind of just like to start doing a little bit of an icebreaker to kind of get to know you just a bit better. So we'll start with where you're from and kind of how you got started in the game.
I am from Totowa, New Jersey, small town up in northern New Jersey. I love it there. Been there 17 years since I was born. So I love living there. And my answer's quite simple. I started just because my dad got me into it. My dad played it. Because he grew up in Wales and he played it his entire childhood, and then he kind of passed that on to me, and then I fell in love with the game. So I have my dad to thank for getting me into it.
Nice. Your favorite non-soccer sports team?
Nonce. Okay. I gotta think because honestly, I haven't really been like I watch I watch other sports, but I'm not really a fan.
Okay, so let let's
Anyone
let
else?
let's go to let's stay in soccer. Who's
Okay.
your favorite team then?
Liverpool.
Liverpool. Okay. Why is that? Just those are
Same
not.
same thing as why I started soccer. My dad was
Mm,
a Liverpool fan,
okay.
so I grew up watching all their games, and
So, well, you guys got a title this year, so
yes, I'm very happy. We were in Cincinnati, I think, when they won it. Yeah. And my roommate for that trip was an Arsenal fan, so it
nice.
ended up being fun.
Most recent movie or TV show that you've watched?
Um, most recent movie I've watched was Revenge of the Sith because it's May, obviously. I'm a big Star
Nice.
Wars guy, and I didn't go to the theaters and watch it because I know it re-released in theaters, but I did watch it.
Okay. What how would you rank the first two trilogies? How would you rank them in order?
So those 6 movies.
Yeah.
Um, I would go Revenge of the Sith first. It's probably obvious. Then Return of the Jedi, and then I think this one slept on, but I've rewatched it so many times. I love Attack of the Clones for
Mm,
some reason. So that's the first three, and then A New Hope, and then I think the Phantom Menace is last,
mm.
not because it's a bad, just because of the quality of the other five.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but all
Understandable.
all 10 out of 10 movies.
Nice. Yeah. Big Star Wars guy. I actually have to watch the new show, the Andor, the new season. So I have to get back into that, see how that was. I've heard good things. So
Yeah.
um let's see. All right, so I've gotten this question from NHL GMs that they ask some of their prospects that they've been interviewing these past couple of years. What's your spirit animal?
I'm gonna say lion just because that's just like I kind of have the mentality of one, and I try to have one, and I just they're relentless. They're I see this quote somewhere where it's like you've probably seen it as well, where they're not the king of the jungle because they're the fastest or the biggest or the strongest. It's because of their mentality.
Yeah.
So that's stuck with me, and I guess that'll be my answer because That's what I can relate to the most.
Yeah, I only asked this question because it was a big quote that came out of the draft last year was Tijah Ginla, Utah Mammoth draft pick last year. His spirit animal was a Pegasus. Didn't explain why. He was just like, yeah, I just think I'm a Pegasus. So I thought that answer was just hilarious. So, um, and then last one, if you were only able to eat one meal the rest of your life, what would that meal be?
A Chipotle burrito.
All right, so what's on your Chipotle burrito? What's your order?
Um, so back when they had the brisket, that's my favorite. That was my favorite protein. But now they have the honey chicken, and I love
Mm,
that. So I get brown rice, black beans, honey chicken, sour cream, corn, and cheese, and it's got
nice.
everything in it.
Yeah, that's
And
right there.
you can ask my friends, you can ask my parents. I'm addicted to it. I love Chipotle so much.
I know I'm a big hockey guy, so I watch the World Juniors, which is basically the U20s.
Yeah,
Um and I believe whenever they win that tournament, because Chipotle is a sponsor, they get like
yeah,
free Chipotle for like a year or whatever it is.
for a year. Wow,
Yeah, so they always do good they've won the last two tournaments, so I know those guys, love Chipotle, so
yeah,
it's
they're
just
blessed.
it's just interesting to see that's like a perk of winning the tournament. So
Yeah,
all right, so let's just kind of get into your career and your life a bit. Obviously, you talked about your dad, Nick, who was a former player. Just talk about, your relationship with him growing up and how he kind of motivated or pushed you in any way to kind of be the player you are today.
oh yeah. I mean, he's been my biggest critic even since before I played for Red Bull when I was playing, outfield for the small club teams. Whenever I was feeling tired or lazy, he'd always still be on me to get in my backyard and train. And I just think, whatever I thought was enough, that wasn't enough to him, and he always pushed me to go further. And I just think that kind of instilled the belief in me that, I can work hard, but it always needs to be more. I can always get better. There's always room for improvement. So I think he played probably the biggest part out of anyone in, really developing me in the early stages, especially because he was a coach for a long time for his high school team. So he used, that experience to bring into me, into training with me. And especially when I made that transition from, outfield to goalkeeper when I was 10 or 11. I know it's young, but it's still a tough transition to make because he was a goalkeeper when he played. So I think that's what he always wanted me to be. So just him being a part of that process and helping me transition from, you know, two completely opposite positions is a big reason of why I'm here today. It was kind of like the roots of how it all started.
Nice. Obviously you have a sister as well. She's obviously gone through a lot of stuff in her young life so far. Just talk about that relationship and how the family's kind of, revolved around her to kind of, help her get through these tough moments in her life.
Yeah, I mean, she's as you said, she's been through hell and back, and it, my parents, especially my mom, because it could have been this whole situation could have been much worse. We could have not caught it as early as we did if it weren't for my mom because she had that spider sense that something's wrong because we went to like the local clinic and they told her it was shin splints because she was having really bad pains in her shins,
Mm,
and I think a week or so they should go away, and they didn't go away, and 2 3 weeks on, they got worse. So my mom was like, something's wrong. So they went and got a blood test, and they obviously found out what she had. So my mom especially has been probably the number one, supporter for her in terms of just having that, like I said, that feeling that something's wrong. And now whenever she carries that into, like, if Sophie's feeling sick or anything, she'll take extra precaution to make sure, she stays okay. And as well, I'm not saying, me and my dad also, it's life changing for all of us. It changes your whole perspective on, your relationship with your family. I definitely took time with her for granted before,
Mm.
uh, finding out what she was going through, and now, we're stronger than ever. I represent. I'm sure you've seen. I wear a shirt every game
Mhm.
for her, so it's just about keeping that connection and that bond with her, and it's grown so strong over these past almost 2 years now, and she's almost through the woods. I think her treatment ends in November, and it's crazy to think that because, back in the summer of 23, when they told us it was a 2.5 year process, felt like forever. But now that we're a few months away from that, it just feels surreal, and I'm so grateful.
You talk about that shirt. Obviously, it says Sophie Strong. We've also seen Dante Van Zier wear it on the pitch when he scored a goal. He took his shirt off and it said that. He's also done the cleat exchange, I believe, with Sophie as well. Just talk about that relationship with the club to kind of show that support for you and your sister, and what that slogan Sophie Strong means.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, with Red Bull, I've been so grateful towards Red Bull, for what they've done for her. Obviously, what Dante did was a complete surprise with the shirt. We had no idea that they made it, that he had it on. So when we were watching it on TV, I wish I got my mom's reaction on video because she flipped out. It was insane. It was so cool and such a nice gesture, and all the stuff they've done online, to help other people hear her story because she's not the only one in the world with this kind of disease.
Yeah.
So just reaching out to other people that are going through the same thing and showing that support is just it's helped. They've Red Bulls have boosted that a lot, and I'm so grateful again for everything they've done.
Word. And I'm glad to hear that, her treatment's almost done. November can't come fast enough. And we're all proud of Sophie and her fight as well. So um just on back onto your career a bit, you obviously talked about that transition from being a striker to goalkeeper. Talk about what went into that decision and what type of striker were you back in the day at TSF?
Oh no, I mean, like looking back on those times, it was definitely just it was just a load of fun, and I was more of a hold up because I was still taller than everyone at that age, so it was kind of a hold up. I could finish from anywhere pretty much. I took most of the set pieces. I think they stuck me in the box for corners, but free kicks, penalties, I was on all of that. And like we spoke about earlier, with my dad getting me into goalkeeping, he used to whenever I first used to start training as a goalkeeper, and when I first joined Red Bulls, he always told me, he was like, you were a striker, so when you're in those situations as a goalkeeper, think about what you would do as a striker if you were in
Yeah.
that position, and then that helped me a lot, and I still use that kind of mentality today.
So obviously you were at TSF.
Yeah.
Red Bull has a partnership with them. Just talk about how Red Bull popped up on your radar and that first connection that you made with the scouting department or the academy in any way.
That's tough. My memory's foggy on it. You might have to ask my dad, but I think because I've mentioned already that my dad coached in high school, and I think he had a few connections. I think his assistant coach was a former MLS player, and he knew a few people. And I remember, I mean, before I even joined Red Bulls, I would go to Red Bull games and all that stuff, and I do the spring summer camps. It's insane
Yeah.
now because I would go on the field every morning and I see those little kids doing those spring and summer camps training. I'm like, that literally used to be me. I used to be one of those kids looking over onto the first team field at Luis Robles, being like, I want to be there one day. So when it all comes full circle, it's just insane. But I think Red Bull, it just kind of came very quick and naturally because I did a few like indoor camps. I did many tryouts with them, So they've just been a process from the beginning, and obviously so grateful that I because it was a long process to get into the academy. Had to go through many tryouts and many RDS games, many pre-academy games. So it's a long process, and I was grateful for it.
Obviously, you're still a very young player, 17 years old. You know, you talked about seeing those kids, and you're like, man, I was just there just a handful of years ago. But you look at this Red Bull 2 roster and the senior team, and you see guys like Adri Mamedi, Julian Hall, Matthew Dos Santos, Tanner Rossborough, the list goes on, who are in those same position as you know, only a year or two apart from you as well. Talk about how kind of having those guys alongside of you, especially down in the trip in Florida. I've seen all those pictures. Obviously, you guys are very close, it seems. How they have helped kind of settle you in your second pro year with Red Bull 2.
I mean, they've definitely helped me a lot, and they've made it more comfortable, and they've allowed me to like thrive in those kind of environments. Because my first preseason, I was 14. It was in 2023,
Mm.
and we stay in the IMG. We stay in the villas next to the fields, and I was in a house with Sean Nealis, JMI, Cam, Daniel Edelman. I'm just there. I'm so nervous. Stayed in my room. Didn't really do that much talking my first camp, but having those guys like the next year, I think it was me and Jules, and even just having Jules there in 2024 helped a lot because he was someone I played with, I have a close connection with, and then it makes me feel old now because all these guys are younger than me. I'm one of the older young guys,
Yeah.
but having a whole, I'd say, kind of community, kind of little group of academy kids, it just goes to show the quality we have at this club and the production of the academy. And but no, they've made it an infinitely better experience being up here.
Um, Talking about those guys, you guys went on to win the 2023 MLS Next playoffs, I believe. That's the tournament you guys won down there in Florida as well, right? Or it was Texas. It was down in
Texas, yeah,
yeah,
Dallas.
Texas. Just talk about that team. I know, a bunch of those guys were on that team. I just remember Tanner Rossborough scoring that banger of a goal last second to win the trophy. Just that overall experience with that team, and how that kind of helped you or any way, kind of see the team aspect of a game.
Yeah. No, that I mean that tournament really opened, I think, my eyes and everyone's eyes to like, what it means to even at such a young age to win silverware and to win a trophy, and the process, because it's not just what everyone sees on the field when they watch the games.
Mm.
We're in the hotel for the other 22 and a half hours, and preparing for the games, eating right, sleeping right, drinking right. So it's more than just with a ball that goes into that kind of thing, and that
Mm.
that helped me translate that kind of mentality to being up with the first and second team. It's the professionalism. I think that's the right word for it. Just having maximum professionalism even as a U15 player. You need to be able to conduct yourself because at such a young age, all the hype and all the crowds there can overwhelm you, and it's just about, I think, staying grounded and focusing on what our task was at hand. We were fortunate to have a very good team, and the way we won it, couldn't ask for a better finish because we played the final was obviously against Montreal, and we played them earlier that year in the season in a GA Cup, and we won 7-1 and 4-0. So to go 1-0 down with 2 minutes left,
Mm.
it's like, are we about to lose this to this team? But forever thankful to Jules and Tanner for coming up clutch.
Yeah, you talk about GA Cup from that year. I believe Julian got a red card in that game, and it kind of spiraled that tournament down the toilet per se. Did that? did that kind of bad taste in your guys' mouth kind of motivate you guys more for that playoff win?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And we still make jokes about it with Jules today. And
Definitely wasn't a red card. I
he
I
says
remember
he
seeing it.
says he says he didn't mean to do it, but it didn't look that way. But no, I mean not even just that GA Cup, the year before where I played up the GA Cup, we made it out of the group. I believe we played Sacramento. That might have been I think it was Sacramento Republic in the quarterfinals. We lost 3-0. And
Mm.
then playoffs later that year, we played Portland in the quarterfinals. In the that was playoffs. We lost 2-0. And then obviously you said another quarterfinals exit to Austin and GA Cup. It was just like a feeling that we know 1,000% we can go farther than this. It was just like, again, like I mentioned earlier, having that extra drive, that extra motivation, that mentality, that professionalism, and I think that's what the whole team had. Because a lot of the kids, like you mentioned, that were in that tournament had also played up with me for those previous GA Cup and playoff exits. So I think it was just a matter of getting over that hump. We called it the quarterfinal curse because it was always quarterfinals, and then once we besides probably winning the tournament, I would say that for me personally, that second best feeling was winning that quarterfinal against Seattle, 4-0, because it was just like in the back of my head, especially like this is the game where it tends to slip, and when we absolutely dominated them in the second half, especially, it was a surreal feeling. Now it's like now it gets real. Now it's a semifinal. Now you're playing to play in a final. So that's pretty much it.
People always ask this question of, do you hate losing more than you love winning? And I'm a former athlete as well. I didn't go as far as you did, obviously, in life, but just talk about that saying. Is that a real thing? Do you need to hate losing more than you love winning to be successful at the higher levels?
I would say so, yeah, because I think the feeling of hating losing more than you love winning makes winning more enjoyable, and
Mhm.
that may seem obvious, but that's just how I've seen it. And whenever you lose, it adds that want to learn to get better, so you never have to feel that way ever again, or as little times as possible, because you're never going to win 100% of the time. You're always going to lose in life. That's just how it is.
Mhm.
But no, as simple as I can put it, hating to lose more than you love winning just makes winning feel all the more better.
Or so obviously that same year you signed pro with the second team and then later get that homegrown deal. Talk about that discussion with your family to ultimately go pro, and what were your emotions when you finally saw the contract in front of you and you signed that dotted line, just that you're a professional player now.
Yeah. I think I can try and remember how it happened. I think I was playing Xbox in my room. I think it was like a weekend, so I was just chilling, and my dad and my mom pulled me into the living room, and I was like, "Not now! I'm not done with my game." And my parents were like, "No, get in here now." So I was like, "Ugh, okay." So I walked in the living room, and they were just yelling at me. So I'm like, "Why are you guys smiling?" And my dad tells me sit down. So I sit down on the couch, and he goes, "Aiden, you're a professional player for the New York Red Bulls." And I was like, I didn't scream. I just like I sat there, and I think I fell back on my couch and just laid there. It's like it's an indescribable feeling, honestly, because like the thought, it had always been a thought in my head during the academy. I was like, I know I have the potential to get here, but I'm not here yet, and I want this so bad. And then having my dad tell me that I'm going to be a professional soccer player at such a young age is like I can't, you can't put words. I don't think anyone could put words into it
I
besides
could
surreal.
I could just imagine you, obviously putting the controller down, like, oh no, what did I do wrong this
Yeah,
time? Just going in there, like, obviously you just lost your game now that you have to leave, and it's like, oh, what did I do, mom and dad? But to get that news, I mean, I can only imagine. I probably would have passed out. I would just like, oh my God, this isn't real. So that kind of sums up what I probably would have went through. Um, Basically after that, obviously you didn't play much that 2023 year pro. You still kind of were in the academy. But the next season, 2024, as a 16-year-old, you're playing your first season pro, first full season pro. Talk about that overall season because there was a bunch of ups and downs.
yeah.
Just, what did you learn from that year overall?
I think the number one lesson I learned is that, you know, once you sign pro, it's not it's not like, oh, congrats, you did it. It's like, okay, now you get to work. It's just the beginning. It's not the end. And I learned that we went it was off to a good start. The Open Cup game, my debut, we won 5-1, and then we played Philly the next week. That was my first next pro professional game. And I think we played Miami after that, and we won that game. So I was like, my mentality after those few weeks were like, okay, this isn't too bad. And then we had a spell where we were losing, 4-1, 2-0, 5-1 to Philly, which wasn't nice. And it humbled me in a way. And also, my coaching staff, especially Miguel, he's helped me a lot with the professionalism and the mentality side of that, and staying humble, staying professional, not getting, you know, in my head too much or overconfident, just putting my head down and working because, you know, next pro is only the beginning. It's only the first stepping stone.
So this second year, you guys are obviously off to a really good start, especially you and the defense. Obviously, last year you guys were bottom third in goals against. This year you're kind of average in the middle, just above average as well. What's the biggest difference that you've seen individually from guys that have kind of sparked this improvement so far?
Um, just remembering last year and how it felt sitting in the locker room, just us after getting crushed, or maybe losing games 2-0, 2-1 that we should have put away, where we were the better team, where we should have won by more goals. And it's just remembering that feeling, that boil in your stomach of like you wish you could have it back but you can't, and there's only next week. You get an opportunity next week. That's the greatest thing about this sport. No matter what happens, there's always an opportunity to get better and to learn. And I think that mentality that the guys that were here last year have spread really quickly within some of the new guys this year, and they've gotten that message. And we've worked incredibly hard at the start of the season. We know it's still early. We've only played 8 games, so and we're always hungry for more. Even after we win, we're like, what could we have done? What could we have done better to maybe kill this game earlier, or not giving up a tying goal, even though we go to win that game. Just all those small things that help the team improve.
To your goalkeeper room at Red Bull too. Obviously, they always have a veteran type player in there to help you guys out, along with the first team guys like AJ and Carlos. But what have like a Dallas, Odell, or Austin have done for you personally, or in your game? What have they kind of taught you in their wise years of being in their young 20s?
Well, yeah. Don't get me started on those guys, man. Um, you know, Being with Dallas last year was just like it was honestly just like having a new best friend. Even off the field, we did so many things together off the field to bond. Just going out to eat, spending time with each other, going to watch academy games, and then the away trips, just spending time with each other. But on the field, like I mentioned earlier, it's because they have a sense now of what like real professionalism should be like.
Mhm.
So again, I took that from him, especially and with Austin as well. It kind of brings like the same the same message. It's just about, no matter how well you're doing, even if it's a training session or you made a good save or had a good few actions, it's just you got to keep focusing and focus on the next play. Because if in a game, especially, if you make a lot of good saves and you make a mistake that leads to a goal, that that's what people remember. So it's about staying focused after everything, no matter if it's good or bad. And that's really what they taught me. But like I've already said, especially Austin now coming into, they're just like best friends off the field. Our connection is, something else.
Um, you obviously train with the first team a lot, so you get to see Carlos Cornell and AJ in action. Um, you're obviously eating at the bit to kind of get that first team debut. What do you see from those two guys specifically that you can take from their game and kind of implement it into yours, and or is there like something that you noticed that you're like, okay, I need to do this to finally get that taste of first team action?
I think what I've learned from them is more of a, leadership, more not, and I mean that as in like not, complaining or barking to, first team guys who are much older and much more experienced. I'm just like, as in, I'll use an example like in the game, just like specific communication in terms of, keeping our structure and, how we press, because, it's not just they do most of it, but it's not just the strikers and the attackers that make the press successful. It's also, the midfield and the back line closing that gap, when we force them to play it long. And it's just that communication and leadership aspect that I've just observed from the sidelines from them that really separates, those experienced goalkeepers from more the amateurs. It's just about not being afraid to you know, criticize someone in a helpful way, and to help others around you get better. I think that's what they do the best. As I've learned that firsthand. If I make a mistake or a technical error in a session, AJ Carlos, they'll stop. They'll make sure a point gets across to me and like how to do this better. What I could do better, because we all have different body profiles, so we all do the same thing a little bit differently. So it's just about how I can take it the way I do it and make it the most efficient. So I think that's what they've helped me with the most.
So one more before I move on to a broader international team talk. Obviously, you've played a bunch of games in the academy and now at Red Bull 2 against teams like Philadelphia Union, New York City FC, and some of those guys are now turning pro just like you. You've seen them a bunch of times. What goes into those type of rivalries, especially at an academy level, and how does that kind of bleed into the pro levels as you guys start to get older?
I think it gets even. I think the hunger and the want to win gets even greater, because with the academy it was always fierce. Whenever we played Philly and NYC, those are the games we looked forward to all year, because they're so local that we knew, and other teammates knew some of the guys on the other team on a personal level. So it was kind of more bragging rights. But now that it's turned into a professional affair, it's more, that, as well as, you're fighting for your place in the team, for the first team above you, for the points on the table. So it's just extra incentives onto what was already an intense and heated rivalry. And, some of the guys that play for Philly and NYCFC, used to play for Red Bulls in the academy. Zidane Yanez, who I played with U12, U13 growing up, and
Yeah,
now I got to play against him. Um, Cavan, who we obviously know plays for
yeah.
Philly, grew up playing against him from U12. Kellen LeBlanc plays for Philly. He was my roommate in uh in Costa Rica for the last national team camp. So those guys we have deeper connections with. Just adds more to an already intense game.
Um, Obviously, from a fan's point of view, there's a lot of deep rooted like I don't know if hate is the right word, but like they have disdain for those other teams that like, and I'll add DC in there because obviously that's a an original rivalry. Do the players sometimes feel that at all in these type of games? Obviously, you talked about being friends with some of these guys, the relationships that you've had with certain former teammates that have moved on to some of those teams as well, international teammates as well. Is there any, when you see that badge, you're like, oh, I don't like those guys? Or is there like a professional respect that you guys give, but there's also, we're gonna beat you guys.
Yeah. No, there's definitely respect. I feel like no matter the rivalry, there has to be respect in football because that's the core of the sport. But it's not, yeah, it's not more of a, we hate you guys. It's more of a, you know, we know our teams better, and we're fighting for things, and you know we want to prove to everyone else that you know New York is red, or we're better than our rival teams.
Right. Okay, so now obviously move on to international soccer. Obviously, you're in a special situation that you're a tri-national. You're eligible for the US, Wales, and England. And you've also represented all three of them at the youth level. Let's start with the US first. Obviously, this is where you were born. I believe this is the the national team you've represented the most so far. Um, just talk about what you've seen in those US camps, or, from those training sessions that spark your interest in the team, or any other specific reasons that kind of, spark your interest in representing the US going forward.
Yeah, well, obviously, like you said, the U.S. is my home country. I was born here, so it has that meaning to me. But also, what makes it even more special, like you said, is all those guys that I always play against, and rival, and disdain. Now I get an opportunity to play with them, and be teammates with them and bond with them in that way, as well as on my own team. Because Tanner, Jules, they've obviously, Toby, Audrey, they've all had past experience playing with it. So the more I get to be with those guys, the greater connection we build. And if they're coming with me to these national team camps, then all the better. But I think it's just the relationship I get to build with different players from different teams across MLS is very special.
Next we'll go to Wales. Obviously, you talked about your dad being from Wales. I remember you getting that first call up. I believe it was, when did you get that first call up? Was it
Um,
was it 2 years ago, or?
I think it was December, November 2023.
Yeah. All right. So just talk about, getting that call and being able to represent the country that your dad is from. Just talk about all the emotions and what went to that decision to kind of go out there and get that experience.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, Wales obviously means a lot to me and my dad, especially because, that's his country. That's where he was from. That's where he grew up. And, that's where I always went as a kid, most Christmases, because my grandparents lived there.
Hmm.
I would, they would either come to the US, or, I go to Wales almost yearly, pretty much, excluding, those 2 COVID years. But, Wales is somewhere I've held dear to my heart, and I go almost every year. So it meant a lot to me, before going into the camp. And, like I said earlier, I support Liverpool, English club. So seeing, uh, the kids from English academies, from like that's the place every American kid wants to be, getting to play with those guys that grow up in those kind of academies is just like, I was so curious and wanted to know so much about, you know, what their culture is like and what they go through, as well as an American guy with an American accent coming into a Welsh camp. They were pretty. They raised an eyebrow, but I think I earned their respect pretty quickly. Obviously, I got to captain the team in that first camp, so I think that made it a lot more special as well because when you captain a nation, it means a whole lot more.
Yeah, so you talk about that relationship with some of those guys. Obviously with you being an American, obviously there's definitely cultural differences there. Obviously, you said you've gone back to Wales a bunch of different times, but having a northeastern accent going over to Wales, how did they kind of respond to you coming? Obviously, you're an outsider to them. This is your first time being there. How did they respond to you being there, and also the differences between a Welsh training camp and a US training camp?
Yeah, I think, like I said, they obviously raised an eyebrow at first because, the kids from England may see, you know, an American kid or an MLS kid, which isn't as, historic in the sport I play as that nation is, and Wales as well. They might see me as, not as good, or, I might not have their total respect because of where I'm from. But and that was on me. I had to. It was a new group of kids, and all of those kids knew each other. Already from previous camps, like I had with the U.S. So it was just about fitting in and earning their respect. And I think I did that. That's the thing that the head coach said to me before he let me know I was going to be captain that game. Is throughout the course of the camp, on the field and off the field, I had earned their respect by actions I had in training, communicating, because I remember, for a guy being there, their first camp with another nation, I was screaming at kids, I was, instructing it, and I was just making sure, I was heard and I earned their respect, and I think I did earn a lot of the players' respects, and that's what helped me a lot in that new environment.
All right, so obviously now in 2024, you get that England call. Um, Obviously, the English national team is held in such high regard. Um, you know, Especially from an American standpoint. Obviously, England's top three soccer nation in the world, especially
Yeah.
with what they've done in these past couple of World Cups, and Euros as well. Talk about getting that call and what led to the decision to go out there and experience that camp.
Yeah. No, like you said, getting that call up was another, surreal feeling because it had been talked about, like it had been mentioned to me that, oh, England are interested, or like, this scout saw your game, and I was like, okay, cool. It's not, I might not be a call up, but it's good to know that, I'm being watched, and then
Mm.
to be told that, you're invited to an official, England national team under 17 camp was, pretty insane because, obviously the pedigree of the nation, and it was very similar to Wales, being thrown into a new group. Although England was a little bit easier because a few I had played against a few of the players before, because
Mm.
some international teams obviously come over GA Cup. You've
Yep.
you've definitely heard of Rio and Goma. I played against him.
Yep.
I played against him when we played Chelsea GA Cup that year, and then I played against him against England for the US in a cup in Spain.
Gotcha.
So I had experience, playing against him and knew him, before the camp, and now getting to be his teammate was really cool. And a kid named Landon Emanalo, who played for Chelsea, went to Czech Republic for the US, which is one of the camps I went to.
Mm.
So I knew him prior to going to that England camp. So it was a little easier to adapt, but still, that's only two out of a camp of like 20 guys that I had to, once again earn their respect and everything. And I think I did that as well throughout the course. And it was a lot harder because Wales held a pretty high standard, and then England's standard was like broke the roof. So yeah,
Yeah, you talk about that standard. Obviously, you're going from U.S. camps where it's a bunch of MLS guys and maybe a couple of guys from outside the country, to now going to an England camp where it's all high level, high tier English prospects from all these Premier League teams, or some maybe from just outside the country. talk about that difference in talent or level from a potential U.S. camp where we obviously see that there's a bunch of high level guys, but now you're going to England where I think every prospect is probably starter level for the U17 national team.
Yeah. You know, I would, yeah, obviously the standard, really high, but I would say I wouldn't discredit the talent the U.S. boys have. That's the main reason why, one of the main reasons why, you know, I made the decision I did is because, that, I obviously compared, the teams I play with in that England team and that U.S. team, and they can go, we could go player for player all day on, individual talent, but on a team level, I just think it's very similar because, like we play against, our local teams, local MLS teams here, they play against,
Yep.
all their national team teammates in their league. So it was just about, like I said again with England, meeting that very high standard and, earning their respect.
So, lastly, now, obviously the U17 World Cup is this winter in November. Is that a goal of yours to make one of these teams and get that call up, or is there any hesitance of about going to a big tournament like this to keep all your options open?
100%. Going to the U17 World Cup is a goal, is a dream. It's a World Cup regardless of an age group. So that'd be, a surreal experience. And I've thought a lot about, uh, you know, what nations, offer what, and what I think fits me best. And when the time will come, to pick a nation, I think everyone will know about it, and I'll be 100% confident with the decision I make.
Word. And then lastly, before I get you out of here, obviously you're still such a young player. Um, you work on your game every single day. What's the number one thing from your perspective or your coaches, your goalkeeper coach's perspective that you need to work on to make that jump to the first team? If there is
Um,
one, there could be multiple things,
yeah.
but if there's one big one,
No, it's very similar to, what I spoke about with the national team, how I was able to earn all their respects at a youth level. Now I need to earn the respect of men, that have been everywhere, internationally in this league, playing with playing with Emil Forsberg, Choupo-Moting,
yeah,
those kinds of players, and Tim, who's been in the league and MLS legend. So having to earn their respect is 10 times harder. But the end goal and like the what I'm trying to achieve is also 10 times more worth it. Getting to be an MLS goalkeeper starting at a young age is it's definitely been, since I signed, one of the number one goals. So I'd say that's the biggest thing I need to work on is earning the respect, and that's in obviously I have to perform well on the field and for the second team and when I do train with the first team, but everything I do off the field, my recovery, you know, in video, being a voice, you can't just sit there. There's obviously benefits to just shutting your mouth sometimes and watching, but also you need to have a presence as well. And I think that's what I've been working on the most, and still what I need the most work on to make that next level jump.
all right. And then lastly for me, again, thank you for taking your time and joining me here. But if you could share to the audience any personal goals that you have for the rest of this 2025 season, your second full season as a professional soccer player.
Long term, I would just say doing as best as I can with Red Bull 2, helping them finish as high as possible. Missing out on the playoffs isn't really a Red Bull thing. So we want to improve upon that from last year. So I definitely say, put it simple, making next pro playoffs, but that doesn't come just from saying it. It comes from, putting the work in every day and building those points up every week, every single game, and putting every focus into every game. So I think that's definitely the goal right now and the thought.
All right. Well, thank you for your time again, brother. Hope you have a good season. And then hopefully, once your decision is made, hopefully you have an excellent U17 World Cup as well. So thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.